The other question I have here is, this isn't new in politics, right? All the misbehaving and the shady stuff and the corruption and the gay sex on the Senate floor, like, this isn't a new phenomenon. I'm wondering how much, the breaking of the establishment media model allowed for this to get more eyeballs, because now people don't have to rely on friendly relationships with elected officials to get information as much.
Man, you bring up such a good point. The Sheila Jackson Lee audio that we broke, the one that got me on the View. When I got that audio, so I was driving to the gym, and it was a Saturday, and I got the audio and from a tip, and somebody was like, "You have to listen to this." And normally I kind of, I'm just like, okay, whatever. It's usually overblown or whatever. But the person that sent it to me was pretty solid, and so I listened to it, and I was like, "Holy crap, this is Sheila Jackson Lee." And so I park as fast as I can. I get on my phone, I write it all up on my cell phone, and then I go to the gym, thinking like, okay, well maybe this or will take off or it won't, right? And then I think the National GOP Twitter website picked it up, and then it just went crazy from there. But with relation to what you said, I started talking around to kind of other journalists in the sphere here in Texas, and they had the audio for about 2 or 3 days ahead of me.
Wow.
And they didn't release it. Like, what is it? And these are now, some of these admittingly are kind of left leaning journalists, which goes to your point, was like, well, were they trying to protect her, or were they pulling their punches? And probably, but yeah, they had a 2 to 3 day head start on me, and they didn't publish it.
Yeah, and I love that you bring that up, because you're right. I mean, and I heard from a number of journalists locally who had it from establishment media, and they were just like, yeah, well, we didn't know what to do. And kind of a similar thing to when Lena, our county judge, left for her mental health treatment, a number of establishment journalists knew. And it wasn't until, if I'm not mistaken, Holly Hansen with the Texan was getting ready to break the story. And then they found out, so then they rushed a statement over to one of the establishment media outlets to get it out. But it's like, you got to force their hand, because otherwise they would. And imagine if, with the Sheila Jackson Lee story or with the Lena story, what other things they were successfully able to sit on and just kind of keep under wraps,
Absolutely. There's probably so many things that we are all not aware of, because some journalists have sat on it for years or decades or forever. But independent journalism, like the stuff that, even us, like just talking, this is a brand new thing that the establishment media doesn't know how to deal with. Yeah. And, I've done some discussions with establishment media orgs. Like we broke a story in relation to the Hidalgo County GOP and some sexual assault allegations. And the story felt too big for me at the time. It was related to sexual assault, and I had no experience covering that, and I felt it deserved a bigger voice than mine. And I reached out to several journalists that wanted nothing to do with it. They didn't want to talk to me, or they didn't want to talk about it, or they just one even just told me to F off, almost literally. And it wasn't until I got connected to Patrick Svitek at the Tribune, and he's the one that actually talked with me. And this was maybe a year ago, so we had a little less credibility then. And I gave him all the evidence I had, hooked him up with the women that were involved, and he did a fantastic job and got the story out. So did NPR. NPR ended up talking to me. NPR ended up kind of backstabbing me and calling me an alt-right blog at the very end, even though I gave them the story. But yeah, they're lazy. It's what I found. The establishment media is super lazy. They want the work done for them by somebody else, and they just want to copy and paste it into an article.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Amy Robach holding the Epstein story for 3 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Tony, I'm curious, what would you say your biggest story is of this year? What was the biggest story? And you can say either biggest in terms of most views, widest reach, biggest impact, whatever you think was kind of your landmark story of the year from Current Revolt.
Yeah, I mean, the one that kind of really pushed us was the Sheila Jackson Lee, statistically, from as far as clicks go. Sheila Jackson Lee's audio was a really, really big one. As far as local stuff, we did a lot of work exposing Frisco ISD. So Frisco is a town just north of Dallas. and they were doing a lot of stuff, with these groomer books, and we got undercover video of the school board trustees actually meeting with the leftist group, kind of conspiring to do things politically with them, which is a very big deal. The biggest lie a lot of these politicians say, and even some of their supporters will say, is that these city elections are all nonpartisan. And it's the biggest crock of junk. Like it's such BS. And so, but yeah, it's very clear that these board trustees were meeting with these leftists, and so they had a lean. We were the only outlet for a while that was covering Steven Crowder's divorce trial. So, if
how did he recover from that? Like that seems to just sort of like what the video that came out of him like berating her on the back porch, like just being an all around douchebag. I have no idea how I've listened to people that used to work for him, like different comedians and stuff like that, and by all accounts, he's a nightmare. So he's a nightmare to his employees, he's a nightmare to his wife, and the guy just keeps on ticking.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what we talked about earlier. There's some people that will look beyond a lot of this bad behavior or bad things that they do or bad personalities because a person wears the same color T-shirt as them. They wear red. They're red team, Republican team. So Steven Crowder is on our side. So if he treats his wife like crap and treats his employees like crap and lies and all this other stuff, it's like it's okay because he supports Trump. So why not? Right. So a lot of people are like that. And, the media cycle is pretty quick. If something happens, it generally, especially if it's bad, it'll lose power in like a couple weeks. I mean, Elijah Schaffer is a great example. I don't know if you're familiar with Elijah Schaffer, what happened at the Blaze. So that was also a big story for us. So the Blaze is located in Irving. Elijah Schaffer was a host. He had his own show. And he worked with his co-host was Sarah Gonzalez, or he worked with Sarah Gonzalez, who a lot of people know. And so there was an incident at a conservative movie showing that they appeared, and I guess this is all alleged, of course, but allegedly he got a little drunk and he touched her in a very, very inappropriate way. And he was, I don't know if he was asked to leave or if he was just forcefully terminated. And he's gone. Like he left the country. He moved to Australia. He's married, by the way. He's married and he moved to Australia. And still organizations are still picking him up. He's still doing interviews. And this incident happened after several other incidents that were public of nature where he cheated on his wife. TPUSA hosts these big conventions. And there was an incident where he had sexual relations with this young blonde girl, basically publicly allegedly in the hotel lobby. And the girl actually came out and was like, yeah, he did all this, and Elijah survived it. Like nobody cared. And the guy's married, So yeah, these guys survived this stuff and it's just really crazy to me. But
I mean, is it a function of how big his following is? I mean, I'm looking at at Elijah's Twitter right now, 653,000 followers, nothing to balk at. He can, with that many followers, he can kind of get some control over the narrative, right? Yeah,
it's twofold, right? So there's the one, it's to what you're saying, and he knew how to handle it. There's a very popular streamer who I'm a big fan of. Her name is Brittany Venti, and she's native to DFW now. And she actually asked him on a show because they were on a podcast together, kind of like this. She's like, "Will you address the claims about this?" And he said, "Oh, I can't talk about that. I'm under an NDA." And she's like, "Well, you're being accused of assault. Can you talk about the accusations? Are they fake?" And he's like, "I can't talk about it under an NDA." So he knew how to handle it, And it's like, yeah, you're not under an NDA to defend yourself. Like it doesn't make any sense, but he knew how to handle it, right? So that's part of it. The other part is the Me Too movement was an absolute disaster for women as far as sexual assault cases go. Because there's so many men and just people in general that don't believe women when these things actually do happen. And you can't really blame them. It's the boy who cried wolf thing. Yeah. You had all these women that were making up these sexual allegations or assault allegations, years later, and they turned out to be fake. And now when something like actually serious happens, a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is fake," So that's part of it too.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it is, or get your thought. How much we're just so numbed up. Like every day there's some breaking news that's, aliens are here, or, Putin invades Ukraine or whatever. There's always some huge story, and we've completely lost the lexicon about like what is important or matters, or it's just maybe kind of bottom of the fold actual news. And we can't really process. When I say we, I mean us collectively as a community can't really collectively process what really deserves attention and what doesn't, because everything is breaking.
Michael, you have told us many times that aliens are here.
Yes.
They are. They've been here for a long time. But
See, I'm Catholic, so I subscribe to the idea that aliens are actually demons, and not actually like. I'm a big.
I think Michael might agree with you.
So,
I mean, I don't know. That sounds plausible. Why not? They could be demons.
but to your point, like independent journalism and social media has been great because it gives smaller people a voice to talk about things that the establishment can't control. So that's a positive, right? I mean, we're a product. Current Revolt is a product of that, so we benefited from that. But the negative side of that is it gives people a voice that may necessarily have a voice. There's a lot of schizophrenics in the Republican right, and definitely the left, but definitely in the Republican right, and definitely in the news sphere. I mean, you hear about people talking about, mass shootings that don't happen or other really, really crazy stuff. And I look at these people, they have like 80, 90, 100,000 followers, and they'll say something really ridiculous and it's got a bunch of likes, and it creates they're platforming these schizophrenics, and then their followers or their supporters are also pumping out their news. And it just makes our side look bad, and it just negatively impacts society as a whole, for sure.
Yeah. No. Go ahead, Michael.
Certainly the right is not the only side with this kind of, bad behavior. Does this exist on the left? And if so, is it covered in the same way? I guess you would know in Texas or
yeah. One of our biggest criticisms that we receive is that we don't attack the left enough, and it's I think it's grounded. I think that people have a good point bringing that up. I've just always subscribed to the idea that Republicans and or quote unquote conservatives hold the majority stake in the Texas House, the Senate. So if you're not happy with the way Texas is run, it's probably a Republican's fault, right? So yeah, like there's not a lot to cover as far as like bad behavior Democrats, just because Republicans have a lot of control in Texas. It's kind of like if you're in California and you blame everything on Republicans. It's like, no, everything in California that's horrible that you don't like is because of the Democrats. So the same applies here in Texas. So yeah, to your point, there's a lot of bad behavior in the left for sure, but they don't have, at least not yet, they don't have as much power over Texas as the right does.
Yeah.